Hey guys, Sindan here. This is giving me my late review to One Piece 990 Army of One. Now this was a really good chapter. I really enjoyed it. We had, once again, same as the last chapter, we had quite a few different plot points leading us to somewhere new, leading to a different part of the story, and we got to see all the different aspects of the story, I think, throughout this chapter. So let's get straight down into it. The cover page, actually worth addressing very quickly. We see Lola and Chiffon holding the ropes, I think, that are attached to Pound while he's in the ocean, and they're just pulling him up and getting him onto the ship, having identified that he is in fact their father. I'm like, okay, all well and good, but let's get into the actual part of the story that we're interested in. So the first scene, we see Sasaki. He's drinking some wine. His men have just come and found him. He's just been freed from his binds, from being bound to that giant ass tree, because Big Mom's attack went through the walls of everything, went through the air, and managed to actually rip a hole through the tree that he was bound to. And he calls it the sacred tree. I'm not sure if we ever had any information about that. Why is it the sacred tree? What did it do? Did someone give it that title, or has it always been like a sacred tree in Wano? I'm not sure what that has to do with anything, but he does specifically call it the sacred tree, and Big Mom's the person who gets rid of it, therefore getting rid of Sasaki's binds. Now the interesting thing here is Sasaki's like, all right, you know what, Kyoshiro, it turns out he's one of Oden's vassals. I don't really care about Wano and the history of it. That part I don't mind. I don't really care about that. But what he does care about is the fact that Kyoshiro betrayed him. Kyoshiro tied him to this tree. So he's like, you know what? Above all else, I'm going to go kick the shit out of him. But then he notices noise coming from the roof of Onigashima. So it makes me think that, his men tell him, by the way, Kaido's up on the roof. They must have told him that the Minks and everyone else, the Akazaya 9, they're fighting against Kaido and Jack on the top of Onigashima. Somewhere in me, I feel like Sasaki's going to go to the roof and provide backup. Now that would add just an extra level of danger, because Jack at the moment doesn't look like he's in a good position, and Kaido is kind of just watching while all of his men get clapped. But if Sasaki's there, another, Tobiropo level person, especially we don't know what his devil fruit is. If his devil fruit brings a major advantage to him in that situation, he could be quite a big threat up there. The second scene we see is that Kaido scene I was talking about. Everyone's on the roof of Onigashima. We see all these Minks now having assumed their Sulong forms. They are clapping the shit out of Kaido's men. We see, is it Shishilium? It's definitely one of the lion based ones. With his mane, it looks like it's on fire. He actually looks sick, and he's still got his swirly mustache. He looks awesome. We see all these Minks clapping everyone. But what I liked about this, it wasn't just the Sulong form of all these Minks kicking the shit out of Kaido's men. We see Jack bloodied, swords all over him as he's in his mammoth form, attacking some of the, I think even one of the Minks that we know, I've forgotten his name, he was mentioned in the previous chapters. But we see him going in, Jack's going in, but he's not going in to the point where I feel like the power scaling isn't correct. Jack, the last time we saw him, was having difficulty against Inuarashi and Nekomamushi in their base form, so it makes sense to me that the Sulong form Minks are absolutely making life difficult for him. But in his mammoth form, he seems to be dealing out some damage as well. What we have here is Kinemon almost unsheaths his sword. Now that's the issue I have. Kinemon so far hasn't looked to be that powerful. On Dressrosa, he wasn't all that. Since then, since Punk Hazard, he wasn't really all that. We haven't really seen him put in major work. Like I don't think we've seen him use a haki infused attack yet. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. We've seen him cut through fire, which might be, I think that is haki infusion. That's some form of Busoshoku. But I want to see more from Kinemon, but I'm not too sure how much of that is kind of too little too late kind of thing, where, if Kinemon was as powerful as he should be, being one of the vassals of Oden, being a samurai, understanding how to use the higher forms of Busoshoku no Haki, which people refer to as Ryuo, but I don't think Ryuo is the higher form of Haki. I think Ryuo is what they call Busoshoku no Haki, or Color of Arms. But I want to see Kinemon be strong, but I feel like he was written into a corner where he couldn't be too strong. Let me know if you guys agree with that. I might just be chatting shit. But he's stopped by Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, who have both assumed their Sulong forms. We don't actually get to see it this chapter, but what I love is you see a silhouette of them. They look crazy, and you see that Jack, having seen them assume their Sulong forms, I think he's shaking. Like he sees them, he's sweating, he looks serious as hell. But he's just like, his horns are rattling in his cheeks, almost as if he's shitting his pants. And I'd be shitting my pants if I got clapped by these two guys individually on their home turf. Now that they're on my home turf, they've assumed a form which is multiple times more powerful than they are in their base forms. and they're pissed off at me and they want me. So I would be afraid if I was Jack. We then go to the performance stage where we see a small interaction between King and Queen. King just saying, "Oh, by the way, I never really had any faith in you to begin with." It was quite a big burn for Queen, and Queen was like, "Bro, you could have just stopped by saying you weren't going to blame me." But that's not that part doesn't really bear too much importance to the story. What is important is King gets on his Denden Mushi and he calls the rest of the Tobiropo. We'll get back to that. In the meantime, we see X-Drake with Hawkins, and Hawkins is doing some sort of divination. He's using his cards to determine the chances of someone living through the rest of the night and into tomorrow. And he says the chances of a certain man surviving until tomorrow are 1%. Now, having read the chapter, everyone thinks that it's X-Drake. I don't really think that for some reason I don't feel like it's X-Drake, because if X-Drake has only a 1% chance of living until tomorrow and he lives until tomorrow just because he's with Luffy, I feel like that would be kind of too convenient. But also, if he only has a 1% chance of living, I want to see more of X-Drake than just Wano Kuni. I want to see more of his history. I want to see some flashbacks. I want to see him actually put in some work against multiple different people. X-Drake is a very interesting character. So if he only has a 1% chance and then it turns out that he's a death in this arc, he's one of the things that will make Luffy flip or something like that, it would be quite a hard hit, but I don't think it would be too much of a hard hit. We've seen him for a long time, but in the same kind of vein, we know very little about X-Drake. So I don't want him to be kind of a wasted death, but I don't also want him to be the 1% chance dude, because that just sounds very convenient for me. I'll team up with Luffy. My chances of living are still 1%, but because I'm with Luffy, I'm good. You know, he's that guy. We then get King making this call. He's talking to all the Tobiropo. He's like, "All right, boys, girls, you know, the situation has changed. We got 5,000 intruders. We got 30,000 people at this feast. This is the biggest failure, the biggest disaster in the history of Onigashima. Our internal power struggle, you know, you guys wanting to fight the lead performers. Finding Yamato won't give you that right anymore. You won't get to challenge a lead performer just because you found Yamato. What you need to do now, if you want to fight us, or if you want to get that right, is you need to do whatever you can to stop the Straw Hat Pirates, the samurai, from getting to the roof, which is where Kaido's at." And you see Ulti, she's pissed off by this. We don't actually get to see the rest of the Tobiropo's reactions, but I'm assuming that they're not entirely happy with it. But they understand, you know, given what the situation is, Yamato she's not important right now. We then get a very interesting scene where after that call, Who's Who comes up to X-Drake and he's just like, "Come with me. While all this chaos is going on, we can go and kill the man that I want to kill." And he says we're going to Queen, and obviously the assumption here is Who's Who wants to go with X-Drake to go and kill Queen. But what we find out later is they already knew Hawkins, Who's Who, Queen. They knew of X-Drake's treachery, and he's the person that they want to kill. So I thought that was very, very interesting. We'll come back to that when we actually get to that page. But let's go to the next scene where we see all the samurai and all these guys trying to fight against the numbers, and they very quickly realize how deep these waters run. They're not going to be able to fight the numbers. They don't have that strength. But instead of watching them die, Luffy and the Straw Hat crew, they actually go in like, "You guys take a backseat. I know you guys don't want us to waste any of our energy, but we'd rather not waste all of our men trying to get to the top." But just the way that these numbers were taken out was cool. We see Goki, who's the number with the huge long mane of black hair. We see his club getting sliced off by Zoro. We see Luffy run in. We see, actually, it was a really cool feat. We see Jinbei stopping the club from falling, the sliced club from falling on the samurai. He just holds it with one hand. He's insanely strong. We already know that. Fishmen are insanely strong. And then we get this nice kind of monologue with Luffy. He's talking about how, you know, years ago, we fought against Oars, and it took all of our crew to beat just barely one of these guys, one of these giants. But that was a long time ago. Look at where we are right now. And you see the crew smiling. Brook's like, "Yo." Luffy assumes Gear 4 and goes to attack Goki. Goes to attack actually 2 of the numbers. And you see Hyogoro saying, "Wow, this guy, in his form, in this Gear 4th form, he actually looks like a guardian deity." He actually mentions a specific guardian deity, but I think for a Western audience, we wouldn't really know what that was talking about. But I really liked this kind of monologue from Luffy, reminding the crew, you know, this isn't something that we haven't dealt with before. This is something we've had to deal with when we were in a much more difficult situation, i.e. we didn't have the experience, we were actually lacking the strength, we were all tired, we were all basically afraid of looking at the sun because we were going to vanish. I love the fact that there's callbacks to Thriller Bark here. Even now, so far along the story in Wano, you know, we're probably 3/4, maybe a little bit less than that, done with One Piece, and we're still making mention of things that happened in Thriller Bark, which is just very good writing for me. We go back to that page now where Queen is looking down on an injured X-Drake, and they're saying, oh, why don't you ask yourself why you're in this situation? And Who says, you let Trafalgar Law escape. We had someone watching. And Hawkins says, I figured it couldn't be anyone but you. What is your purpose? So Hawkins is kind of saying, through my powers of deduction, it couldn't be anybody but you. Whereas who's saying we had someone watching you. So what was it? Was it, yeah, I physically saw him do it? Or they're saying that Hawkins was there watching him and he figured that there was no one but X-Drake who could have been responsible for Law's escape. I think it might be a bit of both. I think one of who's men or something like that might have actually been watching, but then Hawkins kind of weighed in with, yeah, you know what? Through all of these reasons, there's nothing that says that Hawkins would be innocent. So I feel it's him. But what I like here is X-Drake. We already knew X-Drake wasn't going to just kind of roll over and say, yeah, I'm part of the Navy SWORD team. They're all over here, and like give away their location or anything like that. He nuts up and he shuts up. He's just like, you know what? You'll have to kill me before I speak, which doesn't really help out because then he'd be dead. Obviously, Queen, being the kind of torture dude, he's very happy with this. But X-Drake is like, nah. For some reason, I don't know what actually happens here. X-Drake, he might have bombs on him or something, but a huge explosion goes off, and all we see is Who's Who saying, what the heck just happened? And he's ordering the rest of the Kaido's crew. He's like, after Drake, he's an enemy. We see X-Drake here in his hybrid form. He's kind of panicking here. He's saying, holy shit, what do I do now? Where do I run to? I can't get back to the Navy. That has to come later. But then he's looking down as he's falling on top of one of the numbers saying, I still have hope, out of the way. And he's obviously talking about Luffy. I knew as soon as he said that, he's talking about Luffy being his hope. He's going to defect to Luffy's side. So he's a Marine defecting from Yonko's crew over into another one of the kind of Yonko crews, which is Luffy's. And I just think that's going to be an amazing partnership. You see why X-Drake did it. He's been in this sword kind of team with Kobe for a long while now, and Kobe has obviously been fanboying about Luffy, saying, trust me, Luffy's amazing. So X-Drake, having already met Luffy before and kind of knowing a bit of what he stands for, reading the news around him as well, he knows that in this moment, when he says to Luffy, I'm a one-man army, I can't say what the reasons are right now, but I want to join you, let me fight on your side. I think he knows that Luffy's gonna, even though Luffy seems very, very suspicious at the moment, Luffy's gonna be like, if you can hold your own, you can join me in whatever you want to do. But what was cool here is how they both attack a number each. So Luffy attacks Goki, you see X-Drake attacking Juki, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit disappointed by this double spread, because I feel like this could have been a more epic. I wanted to see these two numbers in particular being taken out in a very, very spectacular fashion. We didn't really get that. We get Luffy going gear fourth, delivering a Kongan. We see X-Drake using his move on Juki, a kind of dual-wield slice in an X shape called Excalibur, very creative. And people were saying that the Kongan here is being compared to Excalibur. Are they equivalent in terms of strength? I'm not sure. I mean, like, Excalibur seems to take out Juki and Kongan seems to take out Goki. But to say that they're of the same strength, I'm not too sure. I mean, X-Drake doesn't look like he's really putting in too much effort. Luffy's gone gear fourth, which we already know is quite a bit of effort. And that's something else I'd like to bring up. Luffy assumed gear fourth, so there's really two explanations for this. Either Luffy has gained so much control over his haki now that gear fourth isn't as taxing as it was before. Even then, I was a little confused as to why Luffy assumed gear 4. I was like, really, even then, even if you've gained a lot of control, this is still your most taxing form, unless you have a new form, which is now your form that's the taxing form. This form is kind of like gear 2 or gear 2nd when you were on Enies lobby and you were fighting against CP9. But it could either be that he's learned so much about haki that he's able to control it now, or it could be that Luffy is using his gear 4th now in sprints rather than maintaining the gear 4th form, and he's able to sustain higher energy levels, higher forms of haki throughout the fight, rather than staying in his gear 4th form and being drained by the end of it. So I think he might be actually using it in sprints. That's what I think. But it might be a combination of the two. He might have more control. Well, we know he has more control over his haki, but it might also be that he's thinking more about his gear 4th usage, and he's utilizing it in sprints rather than in one solid form for 10 minutes where he just gets wasted. So let me know what you guys thought of this chapter. Let me know what you guys thought of this review. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I will see you guys in a bit.